How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, as always, Hicksydust, here with a brand new Pokemon video. In today's episode, we will be covering Generation 5, taking a trip through the Unova region in Pokemon's Black and White. Now, for all intensive purposes, I just need to make this clear, we will only be covering the original Black and White. At the time of recording, at least, Black and White was the only game to get a direct sequel with Black and White 2. That is, if you're not including spin-offs like Pokemon Legends Arceus or Legends ZA. Like other videos in this series, this isn't a comprehensive breakdown or a lore dissertation. I'm just talking about Gen 5 as a whole and how it felt to play the game from my perspective. We'll be talking about some of my favorite Pokemon, some of my least favorite Pokemon, as well as any other gameplay mechanics that helps define Gen 5 and may have been used in other games down the line. On paper, Gen 5 is already wild. Black and White dropped a ridiculous 156 new Pokemon, still the largest single batch the series has ever seen. Now, there are rumors that Gen 10, Winds and Waves, threatens to dethrone Gen 5 with a whopping 200 brand new Pokemon and 600 in total. That is still speculative, but seeing as how it's going to be on the Switch 2 instead of the Switch, this is highly possible. But for right now, at the time of recording, Gen 5 still holds the throne for most Pokemon introduced through the series. Cool thing about Pokemon Gen 5 is all the Pokemon that they used are fresh designs. They don't dip back into older games to pad the roster. You are living in Unova with Unova Mons, until you hit the post-game at least. That alone gives this gen such a strong identity. When you boot this up, you're not doing the usual catch a Pidgey, grab a Geodude, fill the same early game core that you would in other games. You're forced to actually meet a new roster of Pokemon and try new things. They wrapped that one in one of the more ambitious stories the series has tried with N and Team Plasma, actually asking whether people and Pokemon should be battling at all. I'm not turning this into Pokeology 301, but you can feel that they were at least swinging for something a little heavier than bad guys want the box legendary. Version-wise, Black and White are some of the stronger Your Cartridge Matters games. The core story is basically the same either way you slice it. You're still dealing with N, Team Plasma, and your box legendary anchoring the plot. But the version you pick changes which legendary you get and which side area you see, like Black City versus White Forest, and some different encounter pools. And that's really as deep as I need to go for this video. Same main story, different mascot, a couple of unique side flavors. I'm not trying to read you the entire Bulbapedia page. On the mechanics side, Gen 5 experiments a little without completely reinventing the wheel. Gen 5 doesn't add any new HMs, and if you've seen my previous videos, you already know that's a plus in my book, but this is the game that actually added reusable TMs. In previous games, you would get in some cases one TM for a single move and have to strategically decide which mon to use it on. Probably the greatest quality of life improvement throughout the series. Now there's no more, oh man, I used this TM already, but I want to use it on this Pokemon that I'm switching into my team. Now you can just use the TM on as many Pokemon as you want. And they said nothing is made to last anymore. Gen 5 even had a whole Dream World feature. You'd go online to explore it, meet certain Pokemon, and grab exclusive items. Kind of like how Pokemon Sleep the mobile game works now. But since those servers have been shut down, the Dream World is fittingly just a dream now. Something only original players ever really got to experience. Gen 5 also gives you one of my favorite rival setups in the series. You're not just dealing with one hyperactive Napier anymore. You're in a little friend group with Cheren and Bianca. Cheren is the I'm going to optimize my whole life to be champion rival, while Bianca is still figuring out if being a trainer is even what she wants to do. You end up feeling like that middle point between them, and that balance makes Unova's journey feel way more like a real coming of age story than just me versus my rival. Triple battles show up as the flashy new format. 6 Pokemon on the field at once. Positioning actually matters, all the chaos that comes with it. In practice, they're more of a cute novelty than a pillar of the experience, but they do give Unova its own battle identity the first time you hit one. The cooler system to me is the weather and seasons. The game runs into an actual game calendar, and the world actually changes with it. Different lighting, different music, sometimes different areas you can reach, and most importantly, seasonal forms. This is where Sawsbuck and Deerling become the ultimate "this only works in Unova" flex. You've got 4 forms for Sawsbuck: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And which one you see depends on when you're playing the game. It's such a nerdy little detail, but it makes the region feel alive in a way that earlier gens just did not. Unova isn't just a backdrop, it's on its own clock. Starter-wise, this is one of the few games where I genuinely have multiple lanes that I like. For me, Snivy is the clear number 1, cool design, smug little snake royalty, great final form. If I'm not thinking about anything else, that's my default pick. Right behind it though, you've got Oshawott. I don't love the entire line quite as much as Snivy's, but Oshawott itself is great, and a full Oshawott run feels completely legit. Then there's Tepig, however, who is firmly in 3rd place for me. I don't hate it, it just doesn't do much for me design-wise compared to the other 2. In a gen this stacked, I guess that's fine. Starter energy doesn't really cut it for me, and that alone kind of sums up how good Gen 5 is. I can easily imagine at least 2 full playthroughs here, one built around Snivy, another one built around Oshawott, and both of those runs feel like they could be my real Unova experience. Honestly, locking myself into one canon Unova team would almost be a crime. Gen 5's Dex is just that stacked. You could throw together 3 or 4 different squads out of this thing and they'd all feel like all-star teams. My personal murderer's row out of Unova looks something like this. You have Haxorus, Galvantula, Scolipede, Braviary, Durant, Crocodile, Scrafty, Chandelure, Bouffalant, Ferrothorn. And that's me just trying to keep the list short. These aren't just solid Pokemon, these are "why is everything in this region hitting so hard" designs. This is a game that makes me wonder why we're stuck with just 6 Pokemon. You've got brutal physical monsters like Haxorus and Crocodile, creepy special attack nukes like Chandelure, utility nightmares like Ferrothorn, and then the so-called mid-tier stuff feels like it could anchor a team in any other generation. I also think it's worth calling out, Gen 5 basically tries to give itself a new face with Zoroark. It's not my personal number 1 from the region, but as the marketing pushmon, it fits Unova's vibe. Flashy, a little edgy. With so many great Pokemon added in Generation 5, it's so hard for me to nail down a specific team. However, gun to my head, if I had to put pen to paper, I'm locking in the following Mons as my set team. Superior. I've already talked about how Snivy is my preferred starter for Gen 5, so there's not much to go into here. Crocodile. Ground and dark heavy with high physical attack and a very cool aesthetic. Galvantula. Bug and electric Pokemon. I don't honestly think bug Pokemon quite get the credit they deserve sometimes. They're rather seen as just early route Mons, but Galvantula combines 2 of my favorite types into one very satisfying package. Chandelure. A fire ghost type, which fits a very dark and gothic aesthetic with very good special attack. Count me in. Axew. Evolves into Haxorus, pure dragon type. Being pure dragon gives this Pokemon less weaknesses than some of its other counterparts. Its first form is strikingly adorable, and its final form is peak. If this formula doesn't sound familiar to you, then I know you haven't been watching my videos. Lastly, there's Braviary. This Pokemon evolves from Rufflet, late enough to consider it a pseudo-legendary, with the benefit of a varied move pool and a striking design, making it my all-time favorite bird Pokemon. There's really no surprise it makes it onto my list. However, you catch this thing considerably late, so make sure you stockpile your rare candies in preparation for this one. This team is rather scattered throughout the map, so there is a possibility of needing to add like quick substitutes onto the team to flush this out and make it through the game. Some contenders happen to be Mincino, Pidove, among others, which, often enough, they make such a good case throughout the game that it's hard to replace them. But like I said, the above Pokemon team is my favorite teams list. I would consider Durant here, Bug Steel, but the fact that you catch it on Victory Road doesn't give you enough time to really tweak its moveset going into the Elite Four. So I replace it with Galvantula, a bug and electric type that you catch much earlier on. Gen 5 drops the largest batch of new Pokemon the series has ever seen, and it's not really relying on obvious filler to hit that number, except for one line, which I'm going to be talking about down the line. My least favorite line in Gen 5 is the Vanillite line. Vanillite, Vanillish, Vanillux. It's not that they're offensively bad like some of the other Pokemon I've ragged on in the past. It's not some cursed horror you can never unsee. It's that in a generation this strong, a 3-stage evolution built around 1 scoop, 2 scoop, 3 scoop ice cream cone just feels, undercooked. It really has that we locked the number, just toss something in energy. You look at a region that gives you monsters like Hydreigon, Crocodile, Chandelure, Haxorus, genuine heavy hitters. And right next to them is the Dairy Queen mascot. Even from a numbers perspective, it doesn't make sense. Gen 5 gave us 156 new Pokemon, the most of any gen, including the original game with 151. If you take this 1 3-stage evolution line out, you're still at 53. You still hold the title. You could have moved this to a weaker generation that needed help bulking up the roster, and nobody would have blinked an eye. Instead, it's one of the strongest dexes the series have ever had. This thing gets promoted to a full 3-stage line and immortalized right next to absolute monsters. And that's what annoys me the most. It's not that so much that Vanillite is terrible, it's that it feels like a wasted slot in a gen that did not need to pad its numbers any further. And it's not Mr. Mime Jr. go to the fires of Mordor levels of hatred for me. It's just a stupid idea for a full 3-stage line in a region this good. Then you get to the shiny, and it somehow makes me even more annoyed. I would have given them points back if the shinies were literally like different flavors of ice cream, chocolate, strawberry, but instead we get generic lavender filter when we know they can hand tune colors when they feel like it. And the shiny situation is kind of the final nail in the coffin here. You had such an easy win sitting right there, and you just didn't take it. So yeah, in a gen full of insane 3-stage bangers, this is one that squeaks in under the door. We're stuck with the triple scoop, the afterthought for now, but, it is what it is. The thing is, all of the ranting is coming from a place of love. I only get this annoyed about the ice cream line because the rest of Unova is that good. When I look at the big picture, Gen 5 is one of the strongest creative swings the series has taken. You've got an all-new Dex, a region that actually feels like it's on its own seasonal clock, battle experiments with triple battles, a story that at least tries to poke at the ethics of battling. I mean, Team Plasma's ideas at parts of the storyline actually sound convincing. Should we be using these monsters to battle with, putting them through all this pain? I don't know. At the end, it all falls apart with Geistis and N turning on each other. But a lineup of Pokemon where I can't even settle on one definitive team because there are too many, this gen, it hits my top 3 all time for sure. Gen 3 is still my personal number 1, but Gen 5 is absolutely fighting for that second place spot with Kanto, and on some days it wins, I'm not gonna lie. Honestly, just writing this script makes me want to boot up a fresh Unova file the second I hit the upload button. That's the sign of a good generation. It doesn't just make you nostalgic, it makes you want to play it again right now. So that's it, guys. That's my take on Gen 5. What it added, why the decks hit so hard, the favorites I keep coming back to, and the one ice cream cone I'd happily eat into the void, or at least another generation. Let me know down in the comments where Unova lands for you, what your go-to Unova team looks like, and whether you're ride or die for the ice cream cone or on a team of we could have literally had anything else. Thank you for hanging out with me while we discuss Gen 5, and I'll see you guys in the next one.